looked at how to change terminating decimals to fractions. Now we're going to look at how to change repeating decimals to fractions. One way to do that is through a series of equations. We're going to start with a repeating decimal we're all pretty familiar with, 0.3 repeating. We're going to start by writing the equation x equals 0.3 repeating. Now we need to write a second equation. Our second equation we're going to multiply by a power of 10. That power of 10 is determined by the number of repeating digits. Since we only have the 0.3 repeating, only the 3 repeats, that means we only have one repeating digit, so we're going to multiply both sides by 10 to the first. 10 to the first is simply 10. So that means our second equation is going to be 10x equals 10 times 0.3 repeating. Multiplying that out, we're going to have 10x equals 3.3 with our 3 repeating still. Now that we have our two equations, we're going to subtract them. We're going to start with our larger equation, 10x equals 3.3 with the 3 repeating. And from that, we're going to subtract our initial equation, x equals 0.3 with the 3 repeating. When we subtract those, we're going to be left with 10x minus x is going to be 9x, and 3.3 repeating minus 0.3 repeating is simply going to be 3. 9x equals 3 is something we can solve, so we're going to start by dividing both sides by 9. This means our x is worth 3/9 because we want to stay in fraction form. 3/9 can be simplified because both the numerator and the denominator can be divided by 3. So in lowest terms, x comes out to be 1/3. So when we want to put 0.3 repeating in its fraction form, we come out with the fraction 1/3. We can use this same series of equations if we have more than one repeating decimal. We're going to start with writing our first equation, 0 equals 818181 repeating. From there, for our second equation, we're going to need to multiply by a power of 10. Since we have two digits repeating, that means we're going to multiply by 10 to the second power. 10 to the second power is worth 100, so our second equation, 100x, equals 100 times our 0.81 repeating. When we multiply that out, we're going to have 100x equals 81 with our 81 still repeating. Now we're going to take our two equations and subtract them. Starting with our larger equation, our 100x equals 81.81 repeating. We're going to take that and subtract our original equation of x equals 0.81 repeating. When we subtract those two, 100 minus x is going to leave me with 99x. 81.81 repeating minus just 0.81 repeating is going to leave me with 81. Now we have an equation we can solve. We're going to start by dividing both sides by 99. We want to keep that in fraction form, so that means x equals 81 over 99. We can take that and simplify it to lowest form by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 9. And when we do, that comes out to be 9/11. So the decimal 0.81 repeating in fraction form comes out to be 9/11. But what about those repeating decimals that start with digits that aren't repeating? We can use the same general process, but we have to tweak our first equation to begin with. Like we did in our second step, here we're going to have to multiply by a power of 10. This time the power of 10 is going to represent the number of digits that are not repeating. So since there's one digit not repeating, that's 10 to the first or 10. So our first equation is going to start out by multiplying by 10. So 10 times 0.16 with the 6 repeating means my first equation is 10x equals 1.6 with the 6 repeating. Now we can pick up and continue into our second equation. We need to multiply by a power of 10 that represents the number of repeating digits. Since just the 6 is repeating, that means we're multiplying by 10 to the first, or 10. So that means our second equation is 10 times 10x equals 10 times 1.6 with the 6 repeating. So our second equation comes out to be 100x equals 16 with the 6 repeating. Now we can subtract our two equations. So we're going to start with our larger equation, 100x equals 16 with the 6 repeating. And from that, we're going to subtract our first equation of 10x equals 1.6 repeating. When we subtract those two, 100x minus 10x is going to leave me with 90x. 16.6 repeating minus 1.6 repeating is going to leave me with 15. Now we can solve that. We're going to start by dividing both sides by 90. We want to keep it in fraction form, so that means x equals 15 over 90. We can take that and simplify it to lowest terms by dividing both my numerator and my denominator by 15, And when I do, that comes out to be 1/6. So 0.16 repeating in fraction form is equivalent to 1/6. Check out the other videos in our playlist and don't forget to click on subscribe. Thanks for watching!